Coming to you from Brick House in downtown Brooklyn, this is 112BK. On the show today, the start of hurricane season and Puerto Rico's state of readiness. Plus, in a dozen years, it went from being a modest blog to a digital dynamo with an audience of 40 million worldwide. We'll hear how Remezcla did it. And then, Brooklyn's Sartorial Geek. Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Ross Tuttle, sitting in for Ashley Ford. You know, Friday was the official start of hurricane season. Not something that gives us much pause up here in Brooklyn. We haven't had a major one in 5+ years, though it's been said that New York is the worst place to be for hurricanes, not for frequency, but for impact because of our unique geography and propensity to flood. And now, climatologists have, of course, said there will be increased frequency with major floods every 5 years. That means we're due. But like climate change itself, we don't seem to worry ourselves with such matters unless they're knocking at the door. But in Puerto Rico, there are no such luxuries, considering that the island still hasn't fully recovered from Hurricane Maria. And there's significant worry about what will happen if another one strikes this year. To talk more about this, we have back on the show Elizabeth Yeampierre, Executive Director of UPROSE. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having me.
So real quick, just to talk about the study that came out last week, the Harvard study that determined there were roughly 4,000 more Hurricane Maria-related deaths than the official count. Why such a disparity, and why is it important to establish an accurate death toll?
Well, the number is actually closer to 5,000, and there are some studies that show that the numbers may be as high as 8,500. And I think it's really important to note that this is a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. This number exceeds what happened in New Orleans, what happened in the World Trade Center when there was that attack on the United States. And that the response from the media has been like crickets. So I really appreciate the fact that you are reporting on this and that you're putting attention on the fact that so many Puerto Ricans have perished, and that is important to you. So thank you so much for that. As a Puerto Rican, I'm deeply grateful.
Oh, sure.
I think there's a lot of reasons for the disparity. One is that Puerto Rico has not gotten the support or the attention from the U.S. government that it deserves to. We're talking about 3.5 million citizens that have been enduring neglect and austerity and incompetence now for a while. The resources that typically go to a place where there is disaster have not come to the United States. They've pulled out support, and they're actually threatened to evict people who are now in shelters here in the United States in upcoming weeks. So being able to tell the story of what actually happened in Puerto Rico would also mean having to explain why resources haven't been allocated in Puerto Rico. People in extreme weather events die for a lot of different reasons: lack of medical care, vulnerable physical conditions, toxic exposure, extreme stress. The suicide levels are up to 55%, in Puerto Rico 55% higher.
Wow.
And so the infrastructure is weak and in some places really fragile. And so it could be that you fell and hurt yourself and didn't get access to care. It could be that, you're someone who has diabetes and couldn't access your medicine. It could be that you're an elderly person who was not able to get access to equipment because there was no electricity. And in some parts of the island, there hasn't been electricity for over 8 months, if anybody can imagine that. So there's a lot of different reasons, and a lot of them are documented in that study, and that's just the beginning. It's important for people to understand that that number is going to change. That's just a baseline right now.
Wow.
So yeah.
And so I'm assuming also, from what you're saying, there's something we can learn that will help with preparedness for future events like this by understanding what happened, what transpired, and having that accurate count.
Well, one of the best ways to prepare for recurrent extreme weather events is to have people engaged and to have people and to be rebuilding sustainable, resilient communities, and to invest in the front line in leading in that. The thing about extreme weather events is that it is unpredictable, and so it's really important for people who are going to be faced with with exposure to toxics and toxicants, and as they are in Puerto Rico, where there are 23 Superfunds, or people who are living under these conditions, to have the resources so that they can prepare for that future. And enough isn't being done, certainly not in Puerto Rico, and not even here, I think, in the city of New York, to prepare us for what's unpredictable.
Right.
In your introductory remarks, you mentioned that we had not had a hurricane since Sandy. Sandy was a superstorm, right? It wasn't even a hurricane.
Sure.
But we just had a tornado recently, and so now tornadoes in Brooklyn have become normalized because now we get them on a regular basis, which is insane. That, the first time you have a tornado, people think, oh, my goodness, there's a tornado in Brooklyn. And then after you've had the fourth one, it's like, oh, we've had a tornado in Brooklyn. Right. So none of this is normal, and all of this is climate change. And I think very few people are ready to endure and survive the changes that are coming.
Wow. Well, and so hurricane season just started. I wonder if things are different this year as the island gets ready for what might come, for that unpredictability.
No, the island is not ready. There are still roads that are in disrepair. There are still communities off the grid. There's still a grid that is old and fragile and isn't up and running. There's still a lack of access to medical care and clean water. There's still 23 Superfunds that were hit by a Hurricane 4. Category 4 hurricane, and there's contaminants on the soil and in the water. There's an ash power plant that has spread ash miles down from its location, and that hasn't been cleaned up. It literally landed on rooftops. So it's far from ready. It hasn't even gotten to the point of providing basic services 8 months after the hurricane.
Wow.
It's far from ready.
I want to jump into a question about the National Puerto Rican Day Parade, which is coming up this Sunday. How will this year's celebration be different?
I know that there has been an effort to squash political discourse, and this is hyper-political. There is no way to get away from political discourse. I think the entire parade should be a direct action. I think the entire parade should be a message to the federal government about the violation of human rights in Puerto Rico and the value of life in communities where it's people of color. So I have very obviously very strong opinions about that, but I don't think that it should be cause for celebration. It should be honoring the lives of the close to 5,000 people that have been documented as having passed, and it should be a reminder that that if we don't take care of the most vulnerable of places like Puerto Rico, then all of our communities are literally in danger. So the parade, I hope, will be sending a very different kind of message this year. Certainly we are going to be in it, and we're going to be delivering a message from a climate justice perspective, and we hope that everyone does that as well, because it is very difficult for us to be going down Fifth Avenue celebrating when so many lives have been lost, and so many lives are going to be lost by the end of this process.
Well, Elizabeth, I'm afraid we're going to have to end things here, but thank you so much for coming on today on such short notice, and we'll look forward to having you back on the show soon.
Thank you, and thank you so much for this. You have no idea how much we appreciate this.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Coming up, a digital platform based here in Brooklyn that seeks to elevate the creative expressions of bicultural Latinos in the U.S. And later in the show, the Sartorial Geek. I like this line about our next subject, so I'm going to borrow it. If NYC-inspired American polyculturalism has a look, a sound, a taste, a smell, it's here. That's what Full Color Future said about Remezcla. Now, I'd like to know how smell enters the mix when talking about a digital platform, maybe some new technology about which I'm not aware of. In any case, this site is interested in expression. First, it was music. After all, Remezcla is Spanish for remix. And recently, it expressed support and encouragement for the response to the last month's bigoted attack by a city lawyer on Spanish speakers at a Manhattan lunch spot. That response was a mariachi band-fueled block party that showed up outside his door. It was a warming kind of thing, as are many of the things they do, or funny, or clever, or biting. Ashley recently spoke with Remezcla's editor-in-chief, Andrea Gompf, about their work and their recent growth. Here's that conversation.
Thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how happy I am to have you sitting here. Remezcla is life.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me.
How did you even become aware of Remezcla immediately?
So the story goes like this. I had just moved to New York in 2008. And I wanted to be a writer, but recession grad kid, so I couldn't find a job in media at the time.
Right.
And I took a job at an immigration law firm. But I was going out all the time and trying to meet people and be in the cultural scene.
Oh yeah, girl, this is New York.
Exactly. So I went out one night to a bar in Williamsburg that actually doesn't even exist anymore. It was called Rose Live. And just happened to be there when these DJs, who at the time had a party called Que Bajo, were playing, and they'd just started their party. There were like 10 people in the room, no one was there. But the music was so amazing, and I'd never heard anything like it before, and it was taking all of these old Colombian cumbia rhythms, but then kind of bringing in more contemporary sounds. And anyway, I was vibing, and I just struck up a conversation and was like, what is this? And they told me that I could find their event listings on a website called Remezcla, and that this website had a lot of other event listings similar to what they were doing. So I went home and I checked it out, and it just kind of blew my mind.
Wow.
I had never really seen a digital platform that I felt I really connected to as a U.S. Latina, a voice that I thought was just really fresh and interesting, and it was covering all of this emerging culture that I had never heard of or had access to before. And so that's really how I found out about it. I became obsessed, and I basically harassed them until they hired me.
So what immediately drew you in was the music.
Yes.
And from the music, then you were introduced to the site. What was it like when you reached out to the site? Were they immediately responsive?
No, it took a while. They had a careers page, section that was never updated. So they never had any listings there. And finally, I saw that they were looking for freelance writers, and I submitted. They brought me in for an interview, but that was after multiple times of trying to reach out. So it took a while. I sent this very passionate cover letter about why I felt so identified by their work and why I really wanted to get involved, and they brought me in, and I just clicked with the team, and I was pretty green, to be honest, but they gave me a job, and that was about 6 years ago now.
Sounds kind of meant to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And coming from 2006, I think is when Remezcla, and then where they were like putting things on Craigslist to now, you've been a big part of that growth, right?
Yes, when I started, Remezcla was still primarily a local blog. So they had an event calendar. It was similar to what Time Out New York had, and Village Voice. This was really before social media was providing event discovery or even event posting capabilities. So this was really the only place you could go to find sort of underground Latino cultural event listings. And that was a big part of what the platform did. And then there were blogs that were also kind of expanding on covering local culture. So my job title when I started was city editor, and it was my job to maintain that event calendar.
Wow.
And then, I started being like, well, I think we could also try to do this. And I had all these ideas about ways that we could expand. And then, as the team grew a little bit, working closely with our former creative director, kind of relaunched the site. We had an old kind of blog roll that was really outdated, so we relaunched it to the site you have, or one version prior to the site you have now. And also launched all the new content verticals, and so we created a film section and a sports section and a food section and all of these other parts of the culture that we wanted to kind of expand our storytelling into.
You built it out.
We did, yeah.
I like that. You took it from a blog to a platform, and I really dig that. What can you tell us about creating Latinx-focused content for specifically the handheld audience? Because now everything's on the phone, right?
Well, in some ways it's intuitive because, I think I grew up on the internet, and
me too.
And so in some ways it's mirroring the way that my own consumption habits. Obviously those continue to change, so you have to kind of stay abreast and stay in touch. But yes, obviously when we started again, we didn't even have a mobile optimized website. So that was something that we thought about a lot, and we're focused a lot more right now on creating a product that works really well on the phone, that showcases content really well. You know, we want people to come to our site who discover us and be able to see all the other kinds of great stuff we do and make it easy for them to find and see.
Right.
You know, increasing our creation of video content, expanding into all of the other platforms that people who, you know, are sort of mobile first are on Instagram, on Twitter, on all these other things, you know.
Right.
What you see a lot of other digital media outlets.
All the stuff that I'm on, to be perfectly honest, and where all my friends are and how we keep up with each other.
Exactly.
How important is virality to you guys?
Oftentimes, I think you'll find that people don't remember where they first saw a viral story. It's not like they were really able to build a relationship and say, this is a place that I come to for X kind of storytelling. Right. And so gearing your entire strategy around that, I think, is maybe is dangerous, and it doesn't really help you build a brand over a long period of time. I think everyone at Remezcla views this as a long-term commitment. You know, we're in this to change the way the world looks at Latino culture.
Right.
Relationship
More than your
building, brand
content
building,
Yes.
creating quality content,
Yes.
a lot of which I think you know, can be evergreen, is definitely an important part of what we do. And I wouldn't say that we're solely focused on viral stories. We've had stories go viral.
Absolutely.
I think you guys actually got in touch after the Aaron Schlossberg story, which did go super viral.
You know, okay, so that's something that I want to get to, because the Aaron Schlossberg story and like the block party that happened outside his apartment building, all of those things, just massive, hilarious, and to be perfectly honest, feels a little bit necessary.
Yes.
How does it feel for you to be leading this platform?
It made me so happy. I mean, you know, I think the way that whole thing unfolded was a testament, I think, to the humor and the resilience and the creativity of our community. And so it was wonderful, I think, that the world got to see that.
Talk to me about how it unfolded.
So Aaron Schlossberg is an attorney, a Manhattan attorney, and he was caught on video in a Midtown salad spot, really just going off because he heard several of the employees speaking in Spanish to a customer who was a Spanish-speaking customer.
Right.
So he's caught on camera essentially flipping out, saying, this is America, you're speaking Spanish, you're speaking Spanish. I bet all of you are undocumented, I'm calling ICE on you, you shouldn't be speaking this language in the US. Just saying a lot of extremely discriminatory, bigoted, horrible things. And so there was a clip of this that we saw making the rounds on Twitter. And the truth is, you know, I think every day there are clips like this that come across our desk. You know, this is a really tense time in our country, and every day we're weighing whether or not we're going to talk about this, because I also want Remezcla to be a place where people feel affirmed about, you know, who we are and what we have to offer, and we're not only focusing on these types of stories. But this one just felt particularly egregious because we're in New York. Like, Remezcla's headquartered in New York. A quarter of the city's population are Spanish speakers. It's 2 million people. It was almost just absurd.
Yes.
And so we wrote about it, and it really, we made a video, we wrote about it, it all just super blew up, and you know, the internet did its thing. At the time that we saw this video, he was unidentified. It didn't take long before people found his law firm's page, where I think the outrage escalated because he proudly advertised himself as a Spanish-speaking attorney who could offer services to the Spanish-speaking community.
Like, that's when it turned up.
Exactly.
Because everybody was already kind of like, this guy is canceled. But when that happened,
but when he was like, I speak your language,
I think they were like, okay, this is just a bad, he doesn't.
So people started camping out outside his office.
Yes.
And then after they wouldn't let him in his office anymore, they started, that's where this protest idea, which I thought was so brilliant, you know, which was just to stage a huge party outside his apartment building, a celebration of Latino culture. They had mariachis, they had people dancing merengue. Somebody donated a ton of free tacos, and they were handing tacos out to everybody. And everybody was just dancing and having a great time. And it really felt like a moment where New Yorkers came together and where they turned a hateful man's sort of bigotry into a joyous celebration of we won't stand for it.
I love it. Those are definitely one of those times I'm like, ooh, I love this song.
Unfortunately, we have to cut the conversation here for our broadcast audience, but to hear the entire conversation, please tune into the podcast. She started with shirts with quotations and then decided she had more to say than could fit on someone's front in large font. So she started a magazine called the Sartorial Geek with an emphasis on the geeky lifestyle. What is a geeky lifestyle? What makes someone a geek? After all, aren't we all geeks in some way? That's what we're going to get to the bottom of with Jordan Ellis, owner of the store Jordandené and editor-in-chief of the Sartorial Geek. Welcome, Jordan, to 112BK.
Thank you so much.
So tell me, are you the Sartorial Geek?
Technically, I started to, and then my college bestie, Liz Crowder, joined me because she's actually knows about like writing and editing. So once we got into print, I needed help.
I see. So you guys are both geeks, but what are your geek credentials?
I mean, we don't really like having credentials. It's just like if you are into the culture and into the fan, if you're a fan of things. So it's not like you have to, there are rules you have to follow.
So are you a fashion geek?
Actually, not really,
No.
which is why I love getting into something new because I like fashion, but it's not like my passion. My passion is people and like pop culture and stories. So the fashion is fun, but like this is what I love the most.
Just communicating.
Yeah,
and being able to
absolutely.
communicate with people. Cool. Well, so, but you got your degree in elementary education, right?
Yep.
But yet, which is a profession, education that needs our best and brightest, yet you decided to make T-shirts. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I got halfway through my degree, realized it wasn't what I wanted to do, and then I love kids and I love students, so we like try to work and support teachers and support like the future, but not by me being a teacher.
Right.
It just wasn't gonna happen.
But your shirts aren't even for kids, or are they?
We have some
You
for
do?
kids, yeah.
Cool. You're wearing what? Clever Girl?
I'm wearing Clever Girl
This
right
is
now.
one of
Yeah,
your-
this is brand new.
What are some of your favorites?
I love this one. I love anything that is inspired by a female character. That, I mean, just personally, I love when there are like really cool female characters in pop culture. So anything that's like inspired by a really powerful woman is one of my favorites.
And who's this inspired by?
This is, so we did a collection with a best-selling author, Sam Maggs, who wrote Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy. So she put together 5 like descriptors of geek girls, and this is one of them. So we have Clever Girl, complex female character, manic pixie scream girl, just kind of like plays off of geek culture and feminism.
Right. Well, so that's what you said. You said you wanted to combine, I read somewhere, you wanted to combine geeky and feminine products together.
Yeah.
So is that kind of how you're doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming more popular now, but when I started, there wasn't a lot, really. So like, if you like to look cool or be like subtly nerdy and didn't want a huge, maybe like a huge Darth Vader on your, you know, shirt that you wanted to walk around with, so you still wanted to like be a presentable woman out in the world, but be subtly nerdy. That's what we're trying to do.
Was there sort of this evolution or trend? Because, you know, there was a time when retro T-shirts were really in, and the retro T-shirts kind of had those bold decals, and you would see a big kind of glow and a kind of shiny Darth Vader or something like that, and they'd even have these materials on them. Is this kind of an evolution of that? Now we're coming up with our own expression in our own way where we can kind of throw out the retro stuff?
I mean, I think that stuff is still cool sometimes, but I like that there's more of it. So even if people still love that, that's great. But maybe not everyone loves that for every situation. Like if you want to be able to wear something, if you have a more casual work environment and you want to be able to wear it to the office, you probably can't wear the same thing you wear on like a Saturday or to the gym.
Sure. But then you also decided to make a magazine.
Yeah.
Well, how did that evolution go?
Yeah, so I love the clothing company, but as I was doing it for the past 7 years, I realized my favorite part was interacting with the customers. So like, I loved selling things because then I got to meet the people I was selling them to or meet people I collaborated
What do you
with.
build, like door to door, like you deliver your...
Comic-Cons, yeah, that's how we did it. So then I was like, I can't really do more of that with T-shirts. I want to be able to talk to people more. I want to have a podcast. I want to like interact. I want to support other people. So the magazine and like separating the brand a little bit was the way we figured out how to do that. So we can support the community and like talk to more people and work with more people, work with writers and designers. And there wasn't really a way to do that with just the fashion angle. So that worked out really well.
So it's like multimedia.
Yeah.
So what's the focus of the magazine and the podcast?
It's geeky lifestyle, but like you said, that isn't really a term that means anything yet. Like it's kind of new. So it's basically like how to be a geek in the real world. So if you grew up with like a favorite story and it follows you through your whole life, like how do you think about that? Or like, how do pop culture and movies relate to what you're doing now? Or people who get to work in those industries, we get to talk to them, especially people behind the scenes. That's my favorite, like not just the people on screen, but like people working cameras or people working lighting or people doing scripts who maybe don't have like a huge focus pointed at them all the time. That's our favorite stuff.
And you know, the expression, or when people say, let your freak flag fly, I don't know if you're helping people let their geek flag fly.
Trying to, and trying to make it, I mean, most of us who are my age, if we were nerds growing up, like it wasn't really cool, so we maybe have either like baggage about how hard that was or just felt lonely,
When
those
was it
kinds
cool
of things.
being a nerd growing up?
I mean, I don't know. I want it to be for the kids that are doing it now, so that's kind of, you know, not that necessarily it'll be cool, but that like you'll be able to find other people doing it with you, because that's hard sometimes.
Right. And so you're the editor of the magazine?
Liz and I both are, yeah.
And I was looking through the table of contents and your latest issue, which just came out, right?
Yeah, like 2 days ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And there's one, it's called the couple that cosplays together. I'm assuming stays together.
Yeah,
right? Tell me about that.
So they're friends who I just met. Same thing through the t-shirt company. They came up to my booth. They're fans and customers, and they are a couple. They actually recently got married, and they are talking about like not only being able to dress up together, but as two people, if you want to like pick something from the same movie, the compromises that come where it's like we'll do your thing and then we'll do my thing, or like how to find characters that you both relate to and love. So it's just kind of their process of like how they literally make their costumes, and then how they pick the characters they want, and then how they feel when they're wearing them together.
And so the big photo in there you have is of Han and Leia.
Yeah.
Is that the couple that
Yeah,
came to
that's
you?
the couple, yeah.
Oh, cool. We'll have to show that.
Absolutely. They're very cool people, too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. And so just a couple of sort of housekeeping things. If there's a happy hour coming up, is that true?
Yeah, so at Word Bookstore in Greenpoint, we're doing an event once a month. It's usually the fourth Friday of the month, unless there's like a big Comic-Con or like a movie release that no one will come. So the official dates are on our site. But yeah, the magazine release party is this Friday from 7 to 9, and then we have other nerdy events every month.
So did you guys,
very
like, you ever
cool.
co-book it and you're like, oh shoot, like Solo's out tonight, we can't have this.
Our first event, which was last month, was supposed to be the night Solo came out, and we had to move it to another day. At least we caught it. Like, we're all nerds, so we caught it, but that's exactly what happened.
I saw the coolest thing in the night. It was opening, a couple walking there, and they had one had a Wookiee backpack, and they were both holding Wookiee masks. And my wife took a picture, and it was like just this Wookiee hanging off one of their backs. It was kind of awesome. And so if people want to check out your stuff, where should they go?
Yeah, Jordandené.com is where you can find all the clothing, and Sartorialgeek.com is where you can find the magazine and stuff.
Okay.
And you can get it digitally or in print.
Okay, awesome. Jordan, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
That's the show for today. Hope you can join us tomorrow when we talk about some of the latest Supreme Court decisions and a recent Department of Health report about downtown Brooklyn asthma in kids. And we meet a Northside Festival performer. Hope you'll join us.